Okay, so review for test on Wednesday. This is the video for the odds. The other video will be for the evens. So, number one. Well, I guess directions first. State the vertex, axis of symmetry. Obviously, those are very much related things since the axis goes through the vertex, and the range for each graph. Just big picture, 1 through 4 ask some of the same stuff as 5 through 8, but 1 through 4 are in the vertex form, so it's easy to locate the vertex. 5 through 8 we'll have to do something a little bit different. But vertex form is nice because we look at the -2 and that says right 2. And then this -2 means down 2. I guess while I'm thinking about changes, the -3 means flipped and stretched. So this has like all of the things that we could change about the problem we have changed. So right 2, down 2, there's my starting point. That's my vertex, 2, -2, which means my axis of symmetry. Don't have to draw it on the graph, but if it helps you visualize things, then by all means. X equals 2. Definitely put x equals. It's not just 2. It's x equals 2. It's the line x equals 2. Range. Well, it's pointing down, so I guess I could go ahead and do the range. It starts at -infinity and goes up to -2. Remember, you want to go from bottom up, from least to greatest. All right, normally our points would be 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, and so on. But we've been stretched by 3, so I've got to multiply all of those y values by 3. I don't think I'm going to get to 27, but that's the pattern we would follow. So over 1, down 3 on either side. Over 2, down 12, which I could count, or I could just look at the numbers. If I start at 2, I want to go to 14. 2 to 14. And then 327 would be way, way, way off the graph. I forgot you had to do what? Actually graph it? Okay, to account for the 3, the stretch factor. So again, when you finish, it's probably a good idea to make sure your picture matches what you said should happen, because almost nobody misses when they write down what should happen. It just doesn't always make it to the graph. Right 2, down 2, flipped and stretched. So I feel good about that picture. Number 3, very similar. Let's see, that would be right 3 and down 4. So my vertex would be 3, -4. And I guess this is how you could forget about the 2. If you just started graphing, axis of symmetry, range, you could do all of those things without accounting for the 2. But I'm going to just circle it and say stretched, just so that my brain will remember to actually stretch it when it comes time. Axis of symmetry. X equals 3. And normally 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9, because this is x squared, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared. But we're stretching by 2. So let's multiply all of those by 2. Over 1, up 2. Over 2, up 8. Over 3, up 18, way off the graph. And then my range starts at -4 and goes up to infinity. I feel like that's the easier type to graph because it's easy to pick off the vertex. As opposed to 5 and 7 that are not in vertex form, they're in standard form. Do you remember how to find the x-coordinate of the vertex?
No.
That's sort of the whole... Negative b over 2a. That's super important because it kind of all falls out from there. Figure everything else out, but negative b over 2a gets you the x-coordinate of the vertex. Again, assuming it's in ax squared plus bx plus c format. So negative 8 over 2 times 1 would be 4. So that's the x-coordinate of the vertex. Okay, a couple of things going on in my head right now. I can plug it in to find the y-coordinate. I can also know that the axis of symmetry is x equals 4. But yeah, let's plug it in to find the y-coordinate. So y equals 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 12. 16 minus 32 plus 12. That would be negative 16 plus 12 is negative 4. So 4, negative 4 is my vertex. Axis of symmetry. I can still do the 1, 1, 2, 4 stuff. In fact, why don't I do that? That might sort of back me into the intercepts. So 1, 1. Whoops! Oh, I almost got victimized by the scale thing here. I did not do that on purpose, but I'm glad I did it. Pay attention to the scaling here. Is each block's worth a half, so over 1, up 1 would be right there. Over 2, up 4 lands me on the x-axis, which is convenient. My x-intercepts then are 2, 0, and 6, 0. And my next point would be 3, 9. It would be way up there somewhere. So I'm not worried about graphing the y-intercept. How do I find the y-intercept? Plug in x equals 0. So that's usually an easy one to do if it doesn't show up on the graph. Plug in 0, I get 12. And again, yeah, that would be way up the page. Okay, y-intercept, got that. X-intercepts, yes. Oh, haven't done the range yet. This one starts at negative 4 and goes up to infinity. I guess the only thing we have to maybe worry about, we said we'd set x equals 0 for the y-intercept. For the x-intercepts, sometimes we get them sort of automatically in the process of graphing. That's nice when that happens.
I'm going to miss out on the test.
Other times you got to set y equal to 0 and figure it out from there. What are you going to miss on the test? No, you're not. Negative b over 2a, that's the x-coordinate of the vertex, and then you're off and running from there. You can probably figure it out. But obviously you got to know that negative b over 2a to get you started. Maybe somebody will remember to remind us all of that right before I pass the test. Number 7, same type problem. It's negative, so it's flipped. There's a 2, so it's stretched. Now that's not really how I'm graphing this one. Like, I'm not using the translations to graph it, but they still apply, so I'll remember that when it comes time. X equals negative b over 2a, so that would be negative 8 over 2 times negative 2. 8 over 4 is 2. So my vertex is 2 comma something. Also means my axis of symmetry is x equals 2. And then let's plug into, oh, here we go. This is fun because some people can't remember their order of operations. Am I squaring 4 Am I squaring negative 4? Am I squaring just the 2? Just the 2. So square the 2, that gets me 4, times negative 2 would be negative 8. Plus 16 minus 5, so that would be 16 minus 8 is 8, 8 minus 5 is 3. So 2, 3 is my vertex. I can do the 1, 1, 2, 4 business, although it's stretched, so I mean, when you say it doesn't work, what do you mean it doesn't work? It works in terms of getting points for the graph.
It's not a direct point.
It doesn't work for telling me the x-intercepts. So it's perfectly fine to do, and it's a good way to graph. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do the 2, 8, because that gets me the y-intercept, although that's the easier one anyway. So y-intercept is 0, negative 5. So I found that by doing the 1, 1, 2, 4 stuff, but I could also plug in 0 and get negative 5. So either way, it'll land on that y-intercept. Now my x-intercepts, like I can visually see where they're like sort of located, like between 0 and 1, between 3 and 4. But I wonder if I can do better than that. So I'm going to set this thing equal to 0. I'm going to factor out the negative because I don't like trying to factor with that negative right there. So 2x squared minus 8x plus 5. And I don't think that's going to factor for us.
So how do we find the x-intercept?
And we don't know the quadratic formula yet. I mean, you might, but that's what we're starting next week or on Friday. So I can't do it that way. So I don't really like this problem. You might remember there was a few where we said the x-intercepts were between. So let's go that way with this one because there's not an exact answer. I mean, there is an exact answer. We just don't know how to get it. So the x-intercepts are between 0 and 1 and between 3 and 4. I don't like that because the question wasn't worded to ask it that way. But we haven't learned enough to find those x-intercepts yet. You have used the quadratic formula before, that's true, but we haven't used it in here yet, so we'll say we don't know it. So it's just right. We won't assume you know it. Number 9. Given each equation, give the exact answers in simplified radical form. Okay, it did not prescribe a method for number 9. So I like the square root method. How do you know you can use the square root method? When there's no x term. When there's only an x squared, then I can get x squared by itself and square root both sides. So let's add 7 to both sides. Then I'll divide. Yeah, you could get rid of the negative first, but eventually I'm going to divide by negative 5 and get 16 over 5. So this one's not going to be super clean. I guess it's not terrible, though. Don't forget the plus or minus. I can take the square root of 16. I'm stuck with the square root of 5. But I don't like a square root in the denominator. So plus or minus 4 root 5 over 5. Well, is it easy? I mean, yes. Again, it's just there's a whole bunch of things on the test. So like, no one thing is hard. It's just a lot of things. That's how I see it. Number 11. Oh, there's the I to a big power. So 56. That's a multiple of 4. So that's just 1. So that's a nice one. Well, I mean, I guess it's a nice one as long as you realize that 56 is a multiple of 4.
So it's just negative 3.
Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. We like that one. How about 13? What am I going to do to fix that?
Let's do I.
Multiply top and bottom by I. I is the square root of negative 1. We don't like square roots in the bottom. We fix square roots by multiplying by them. So 9i over 4i squared. So you could leave it as 9i over negative 4. You could move the negative to the top. You could put the negative out front. All of those are the same thing. Any of them would be acceptable. 15. Please don't square the pieces on 15. Right? 16 plus 25i squared. Don't do that. We're going to have to FOIL this thing. 16 minus 20i minus 20i. And then this one's going to be kind of crazy, but let's take it one step at a time. Don't try to do too much in your head.
No, it's just
25i squared, which is negative 25. So 16, I'll show it. 16 minus 40i minus 25. That would be negative 9 minus 40i. If you wrote negative 40i minus 9, that would be okay, but we usually like the real part first. So I wouldn't mark it wrong, but this one is preferred. $17. 1 minus, I've got to multiply 3 things. What order?
Would you do the parentheses first? And then 3i into 2i, 2 minus 5.
Okay, well, there are options. There are, I think there's 3 different options. You could FOIL first. You could distribute the 3i to the first thing. Or what probably no one would do is distribute the 3i to the second thing. It would be legal, but it would just feel kind of weird. You want to distribute the 3i first?
Actually, no.
I was going to FOIL first. It doesn't matter, but I think FOILing first is easier. So let's be careful here. I still have a negative 3i out front. So 6 plus 4i minus 15i. And then here's the one where some of you are going to skip steps. Negative 10i squared, which is plus 10. I'll join you in skipping steps this time. I showed it last time, I'll skip it this time. Negative 10i squared would be plus 10. I would clean up the inside before I distribute the 3i. I mean, I guess you could distribute now, but let's try to make life easy on ourselves here. 16 minus 11i. So 1 minus 48i plus, here we go again with the I squared business, 33i squared, which is negative 33. So 1 minus 33 is negative 32 minus 48i.
So negative 34 minus 48.
Negative 32? Yes? 1 minus 48i minus 33. Again, another example of a problem that's like, is that hard? Well, not really, but there was a whole lot of steps there, so be careful lest you end up doing negative 34 or something silly. 19. How do we fix 19?
You do the multiply thing, but you have to switch the middle.
Switch the middle term, which is called the conjugate. It will make the i's go away if we do things correctly. Here's another example of one that's like concept-wise not hard. Like that's the concept. Multiply by the conjugate. The process be careful. Hope we don't make any silly mistakes here. 12 minus 8i minus 36i. Here I go again. Do we want to skip steps or not?
Yes. 16.
Negative 6i times negative 4i
Minus 24.
is minus 24. Yeah. Because it's plus 24i squared. Dangerous game, skipping steps. In the denominator, 36
Oh, y'all did the numerator. I was like, what?
minus 24i plus 24i. That always happens, right? That's why we multiply by the conjugate, so that those I terms will go away. And then minus 16i squared, which is plus 16. So negative 12 minus 44i all over 52. You can simplify that. What's the biggest number that goes into all of those things? 4. If you don't see the 4 and you do the 2 first, that's fine. Just make sure you do 2 again. But let's well, which is fine. But somebody saw the 4, so let's do by 4 first. So negative 3 minus 11i over 13. Again, not terrible, but a lot of little baby steps in there. Just be careful. 21, even less terrible. What's kind of the only point of 21? What do we have to be careful about, I guess? Distribute the negative. That's the best I can tell. That's the only thing that's being tested there. So plus 7 minus 3i. I distributed the minus sign, but that's not a multiplication problem. I'm glad you said that, because now that I think about it, that is the most frequently missed way to miss 21, is to be like, oh look, I'll FOIL that. Like, no, wait, no, you're just subtracting. Same with 22. That's not a multiplication problem. That's just a subtraction problem.
What about 24?
24, well, you got some multiplication to start with.
Yeah, but on the right, that's just...
But then subtraction. Let's see, so 3 plus 4i. Ooh, 23 looks weird. I don't know that we've seen one quite like that. Let's take the negative out. When the negative comes out, it becomes an I.
So that would make it I squared, so that would make it negative.
Then I have I squared. I'm starting to skip too many steps here. I mean, if you can do it, fine. Just be careful. So root 50 over negative 3 root 2. So there's two things you could do here. You could multiply the top and bottom by square root of 2. That would be fine. But they're both under the radical, so you could also just reduce them.
So that'd be 20.
That'd be 25.
Which would just be negative 5.
Which would just be 5. So I think it's going to be negative 5/3. Either way you go, if you do the square root 2 thing, you end up with square root of 100 over negative 6.
You can just do that. Like there's 2 radicals, you just divide.
So negative 5/3. Which, yeah, it would have been a little easier if we'd have divided right here and taken the square root of 25.
Yeah.
You can do that. Just be careful if there's a minus sign in there. You have to account for the minus sign first. Here it wouldn't have mattered. It mostly matters when there's 2 minus signs and you think they cancel, but they sort of don't. They become an I squared. 25. Solve by factoring. Okay, so I will be factoring, but I'm going to get an answer. Right? So don't just factor. Make sure you get an answer. K squared minus 3k minus 18 equals 0.
We get points off and don't put equals in. No, because he's looking at your answer.
Yeah, if you didn't put equals 0 there and you've still got an answer. So like if you did all that, I don't think I would take off. I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't take off because you had the answer there. My question would be, you can't get from factored to answers without an equal 0. So I wouldn't take off, but I might, if I'm really paying attention, I might circle it and be like, hey, what about the zeros there? 27, 7x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Oh, this one's going to be a little bit harder because of the 7 out there.
Has to be 7 and 1.
It's got to be 7 and 1, that's right, so that's helpful. We can throw a pencil here. And then I got 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. It definitely needs to be a minus sign in there somewhere. I don't know. I'm just guessing. So that would be a no, right? 14 minus 2 is not 3.
Oh, it's going to be 1 and 4.
Switching the 2's wouldn't do me any good. Switching the signs wouldn't do me much good either. It would make it negative 12 instead of positive 12. So I need to try the 4 and the 1. And again, if you think ahead a little bit, I'm pretty sure I don't want the 4 across from the 7, because that'd make 28, and that's way too big. So I'm going to put the 1 across from the 7, 4 across from the 1, and now I've got 7x minus 4x is 3x, so now we're good. But we're not done with the problem, right? We factored, but we haven't solved. Here's the step that many of you don't show, which is okay, as long as you're careful. So 4/7 and negative 1. Oh, 29, what are we doing? We got to simplify first, and then we'll hope that it factors. So let's move everything over and hope that things work out. So if I add 6p squared, I get 4p squared minus 18p. If I subtract the 3 over, I get plus 14. What would you like to do next?
Divide it 2.
Yeah, let's divide by 2, make it a little bit easier.
That makes it a lot easier.
Maybe makes it a lot easier, is right. So I still am going to have to factor with a 2 and a 1, but...
Do you divide by 2 or do you factor it out?
So since it's an equal 0, the question was, do we divide by 2 or factor it out? Since it's equal to 0, we can divide both sides by 2. Now, if that equal 0 wasn't there, then the only choice you could do would be factor out the 2 and just leave it sitting out front. But since it's equal to 0, we can divide by 2. It's a really good question. All right, got to be 2p and p. Got to be 1 and 7, so I hope this works out for us. I don't think I want the 7 across from the 2. That would make 14. So let's put the 1 across from the 2. Yeah, there we go.
Negative 2.
And they both need to be negative, so they'll multiply to a positive 7, and now they will add to a negative 9p.
These aren't that bad.
So indulging your step skipping here, p equals 7/2, and p equals 1.
Step skipping.
Step skipping is dangerous, I'll put it that way.
Don't trip.
I don't need you to show every last thing. I just need you to show enough so that you don't make the mistake. It's not a matter of what I need to see, it's a matter of what you need to do so you don't mess it up.
I can skip 30 steps.
Right, don't do that.
On the 1-step problem.
Skip 30 steps, and if you mess up step 25, then you're lost.
I messed up like adding the loader.
Let's see, 8n squared plus 33n minus 35.
I'll mess up moving the loader to the other side.
Speaking of that, I think I messed that up in this class yesterday. Nobody caught me. Right here. This was from yesterday. You should have said it yesterday. I moved the 33 over, and yet somehow it didn't become negative when I moved it over. So we got the wrong answer. You can blame me for that. Why you said that about skipping. That wasn't a step skipping issue. That was a, I don't know what that was. Okay, back to 31.
Trust the way he did.
Ugh. There's a lot of options here. Definitely reaching for the pencil rather than the pen. Because I got 1 and 8, 2 and 4, 1 and 35, 5 and 7. So that's a whole lot of combinations. The signs will need to be different. I don't know. I usually say start with the middle stuff.
Not 5 and 7.
It's not 5 and 7.
Although it might be 5.
If I put the 7 across from the 4, that gets me to 28.
But one of them has to be.
One of them has to be negative, so that's not going to get there. Right? If I put a 7 here, it's 28 and 10.
30.
If I switch those, that definitely won't work.
That could be 1 and 8.
So that means that 2 and 4 aren't going to work with the 5 and 7. They're probably not going to work with the 35, because that's either 70 or 140, so that's out. So I think it's back to 1 and 8, and see if that works. Okay.
8 has to be.
8 times 7 is 56. That's not good. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 8 times 5 is 40. Minus 7 is 33. So I want a positive 40 and a minus 7. Yeah, that was kind of an ugly one. 40 in, minus 7 in. Yeah, so we got it. So n equals negative 5. N equals 7/8. Completing the square. You feel like it's not bad? I feel like what I've said a couple times about this test already, like it's not bad, it's just there's a lot of steps. And on the test in general, there's a lot of things. So no one thing is that difficult, no one step is that difficult, it's just a whole lot of stuff. V squared minus 8v equals negative 96. So you got to get it set up right.
We have to.
Yep, like if you want to boil it down to 3 steps, that's not really quite right, but get it set up right, then do the half it, square it, add it, and then the square root method after
We
that.
have to do it on speed, right? We do the whole equation.
No, that's a good question. Half it, square it, add it. Half of what?
Both sides. B. Half of B.
Half of b is negative 4. That's the half it part. Square it, you get 16. And what do you do with the 16?
Add it both sides.
Add it to both sides. Half it, square it, add it. Negative 80? Factor the left, but remember it's not hard factoring. I mean, you can factor like normal, but it's also always whatever b over 2 is. So v minus 4 squared. You've completed the square. By adding the 16, you completed this perfect square, which now makes it easy, or at least eligible, to do the square root method. V minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 80. So let's see. Again, skipping steps here. Definitely an I. 80 is 16 times 5. 4i root 5. That was a lot of steps. That I wouldn't want to skip any more than that. Probably shouldn't even skip that many.
4 plus or minus 4i.
And then don't forget to move the 4 over. So 4 plus or minus 4I root 5. And if you really wanted to make sure you did well on the test and you had an extra 10 minutes at the end of class, at the end of the test, what could you do to check that answer?
Plug it in.
Plug it in. It would be a real pain to plug it in because you'd have to square it and then do 8 times it and subtract 96. But you should get, it should verify that both of those work. I'm not expecting anybody to do that, but anytime you solve an equation, you can plug it in and check. Speaking of that, like back on 29, that would have been an easy one to check. Like you could plug in 1 to check it. 7 halves would be a bit of a pain. 4 plus or minus 4I root 5 would be a major pain. 35. M squared plus 2m equals negative 37. That one's nicer, yeah. Half it, square it, add it. Half of b is 1. What happens when we square 1? Get 1. Right, half of b is 1. Square it, we get 1. Add it to both sides. So m plus 1 squared equals negative 36. Oh, this one is nice. Square root both sides. M plus 1 equals, plus or minus, 6i. And so I move the 1 over and it becomes negative 1 plus or minus 6i. Side note, I would say the test is pretty similar to this review. So if you're good on the review, you'll be good on the test. Again, the warning that nothing really is that difficult. It's just there's a lot of different things, and some of the things have a lot of things to them, like completing the square. So, again, I feel like there's going to be a lot of, oh crap, why did I miss that when you get your test back? A lot of little opportunities to miss things. So pay attention, check your work, go slow, all of those things.